Welcome back into another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. I am your host, Kevin Steele. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyWrath13, and I am once again joined by a trio of, as always, Cody Kutzer, hashtag living the hedge life.
Always.
Joined once again by Ryan and Nate. That we felt they did such a good job that they deserved another chance. So we'll see how they do this week, and if not, we'll have to kick them off the island. But if they bring the heat like they did last week, maybe we'll keep them around for a while.
Yeah, man. Ryan started off. He's already on the edge of said island. He's standing on the cliff, and he's going to have to use these takes, hopefully, to pull himself out. He had some technical difficulty leading up to the pod, so he's starting at the ledge. He's on 1 foot, but we'll see if he can find a rock and start climbing his way back.
Well, once we get to my start of the week, I think I'll buy back your guys' trust. But I will say he does sport the best mustache in the league, and I do trust in him. So that'll be a nice little preview.
Well, it can't be Chris Godwin, so there won't be any more ass kissing at the front of the show. So we're
not at the front, at least. Like we were talking about before, there's always one Buccaneers wide receiver that you can hang your hat on in any given week, and it wasn't Godwin this past week, unfortunately.
No, it was not. But this week they get the Seahawks. So the Seahawks just got roasted for 460 yards from Matt Schaub this past week. So, I mean, wheels up this week for that Buck passing game.
Always.
All right. So this week, last week, we I think we talked about some touch shares from running backs and wide receivers. This week, we are going to just do a little bit more. We're going to go a little bit more pumpkin spice latte, basic bitch kind of stuff, and we're just going to do some start sits this week. Do a little bit more bland, but I think it'll be good. We're not going to cover your studs because for any of us telling you to play Saquon Barkley this week isn't going to do you any good. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper and go into more of the running back twos, wide receiver twos and threes, and some stuff like that. Some more streaming option type quarterbacks who are in good spots. But before we do, today was the NFL trade deadline, and it is not anything like the Major League Baseball or NBA trade deadline because we got absolutely nothing today. Basically, all we got was what? We got the Aqib Talib trade, which he was sentenced to Miami. I know a lot of people made a big old deal about it too, and I'm like, he's not playing. Like, he's not going to play, and then he's a free agent after this year. So I don't know, what the big deal is. Everyone was acting like Aqib Talib's under some huge contract or something like that, and he's, now he's screwed and has to play in Miami. Like, it's just not the case. It's just basically a salary dump.
Yeah, that's all it was, and it was such a letdown too, because I'm walking around getting these notifications about Lev Bell, and then there was the tweet that went out about Philly was looking at Mike Evans, and I was just like, what the hell is going on? It's gonna be crazy. What's gonna happen? Then it was 3:30, 3:45. I keep looking at my phone. I'm like, man, is my data off? What's going on? There's nothing happening. Thought I was missing something, but just Aqib Talib and his salary going to Miami. That was
We got Kenyon Drake yesterday. I mean, that was something, but
yeah, we had the two wide receiver trades last week as well with Sanu and Sanders catching a touchdown for the Niners this past week. But yeah, it was kind of a letdown. I think the NFL does a good job of trying to hype up the trade deadline to look a lot like the NBA. And the Jets were ready to fulfill that hype by basically announcing a fire sale. I really did think that they'd find somebody for maybe even a Robbie Anderson, but apparently they were asking for a second-round pick, and that's just a little too high for some of the GMs in the league. But I guess we'll just have to wait for next year to see if we get some more action down at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the NFL it's a lot harder to make moves, stuff like that. But man, it has got to be awkward now heading into when everybody comes back for practice and everything tomorrow in New York for the Jets after everything that happened. Today with Le'Veon Bell was reportedly out there. Jamal Adams, like, did you guys see his tweet that he actually sent out himself?
That's trouble's brewing in New York, man. It's kind of a dumpster fire right now. I think Joe Douglas will be able to put the fire out, but got to be awkward going into practice tomorrow for I get Bell, Robbie, and Jamal. Like, you guys were all about to be traded yesterday. So
I missed the tweet. What happened?
So he sent out a tweet basically saying that he actually met with the GM and Adam Gase. Like, I think it was last week, saying he wants to be in New York, that he doesn't want to go anywhere, and they assured him that no, don't worry about it. But I guess they actually went behind his back and started trying to trade him today. So he was none too happy.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean,
well, then you also had at the beginning of the year with the report coming out that like Gase didn't even want Bell. And then now they're like, he was the hot name that was on the block for a while. So that's
It's tough when you have a GM who drafts all your players and makes free agent signings, and then you fire him and bring on a new GM. It's definitely an interesting situation out there. Again, I think Joe Douglas, coming from that Howie Roseman tree, will be okay, and I got confidence in Sam Darnold, so I think they'll be able to figure it out. But boy, what a day for them.
I can't wait to see the Adam Gase football life, where it's like you wouldn't imagine the shit that he had on all these people, that he like kept getting jobs and was just able to like get a GM fired and then try and gut an entire roster.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be rough there. I don't know what's going to happen after this year there. I'm assuming it's probably going to be actual fire sale this season. So
anyway, Case might even be gone.
That dude's just a fraud of a head coach. But anyways, we already got our first question in from our good friend Mar Loco, who's been asking some questions the last few weeks. But this week, Juju, start or sit? And he says he made a trade.
Nope.
No, that's a different one. That's not him. That's a different gentleman. Anyways, are we starting or sitting Juju? I think I need to know who else. I mean, unless you're absolutely stacked, I don't know how you're not starting Juju.
The Colts aren't terrifying. They're pretty good, but I'd still be starting him. He looks like he's maybe finally getting a rapport with Rudolph once he's back. So I think it probably are forced to, unless you have something better. But like you said, I don't know what else we're looking at.
Yeah, he's the 16th ranked consensus-wise on Fantasy Pros right now. And, I mean, the Colts, as far as a matchup go, they're literally right in the middle of the pack, ranked 15th against the pass. But to your guys' point, I would need to know who else you're planning on starting him over, unless you're completely stacked at wide receiver and you got three other guys. If you're starting two wide receivers in a flex inside that kind of top 15 range, I don't see why you would put him on your bench. I think he's got a pretty good connection with Rudolph, and Rudolph is much better than Duck, even though he beat my Chargers. But we'll forget about that game for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts do have the narrative of being able to shut out the opposing team's wide receiver one, but like you guys have said, I'll just pile on here. It's also going to depend on who you're sitting him for. But I mean, in a vacuum, start him. But it all depends on who you're starting him or sitting him over.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be hard.
Life.
Yeah, that's
nailed it.
Staying on brand. So, all right. So let's jump to another one. 501. This is. I think this is the same. Yeah, this is the dude that has the absolutely stacked team that.
Yep. That 6-team league. Yeah.
Yeah. I made a trade. I'm stacked at wide receiver. I traded Edelman and Juju for Kelsey and Michelle.
Great. Good question.
I have David Johnson, and he looks to be out for a while. Yes, that is true. My wide receivers are Hopkins, Godwin, Diggs, T.Y., DJ Shark, Calvin Ridley.
He was just seeing what we thought of that trade.
I mean, on the surface, I probably would rather have had Edelman and Juju, but at the same time, I understand this league is stacked and you have loaded at wide receiver. And if you were needing a tight end, obviously getting Travis Kelce was key. So,
Yeah, I personally love Julian Edelman. I think he has a chance to finish inside the top 5, if not the top 3 at wide receiver this year. Once he's been healthy, he's been on an absolute tear for New England. But again, we've run into this guy multiple times, having the depth. If you got to make a trade, you got to make a trade. So not too bad trade if you needed a running back and you needed a tight end. Kelsey's obviously, I think, still in that first tier.
yeah, and especially with we know Mahomes should be back. I mean, Mahomes could be back this week. I really wouldn't be surprised if he's back this week. I mean,
Which is unbelievable.
Kevin,
the playoff game last week, he would have played. So it sounded like it was actually the doctors and the team that helped him out, not Pat Mahomes. Because if it was up to Mahomes, he would have played.
Kevin, are you ready to admit that Pat Mahomes is just a system quarterback after Matt Moore?
We saw what we saw it. You're right. That's all he is. So let's just go. We'll just trade him, right? And we'll just roll with Matt Moore, save the money.
Yeah, get 3 firsts for him. Why not stack up for the future? Get Matt Moore some weapons. Sign him to a deal.
Smart.
Nothing wrong with that. Smart GM.
Yeah, so I mean, this week they get the Vikings, so I don't know. Maybe they should just sit them out because after that, their schedule opens up pretty nicely because they really haven't played anybody in their division. They played the Raiders and the Broncos. That's all they played so far. They have not played the Chargers. They have 2 against the Chargers, and still the Raiders and Broncos to come. So their second half of their schedule is much more easy to take, and then we will get to see if it hasn't happened by then, we will definitely see the New England Patriots defense get completely exposed by an actual NFL offense whenever the Chiefs come to Foxborough. So
you're saying Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. didn't really present them a challenge, or what? I thought they were supposed to be.
No, I'm so tilted by that game because they should have won that game. Like the Patriots, can we at least have a conversation that the Patriots offense is a dumpster fire right now? Like
it is.
It was not for their defense. Like their offense does not look good whatsoever. They have been carried by how good their defense has played and by the fact that they haven't actually played anybody yet. So, I mean, I think what was the stat? Like they would be 4-2-1 or something like that. If their offense never even stepped on the field.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. So many defensive touchdowns, and again, I agree with you. I think that's the reason they gave up such a high draft pick for Sanu. You got 5 targets in the game coming off a half a week of practice, but I think they're banking on him creating a real impact. But I mean, to your point, they don't look very good on offense. Maybe the addition of N'Keal Harry in a couple of weeks will help, but I don't see that being, a real needle mover. So I'm actually looking forward to them facing a good team that will put up points and force them to keep pace.
Yeah, we could see it this Sunday when they play Sunday night against the Ravens. That should be a fun game to watch.
I'm excited for that game. That's going to be great. I still think the Pats win. I think they'll figure out a way to take Lamar Jackson's legs out of the game. But
I don't know. John Harbaugh's done a pretty good job in his career against the Patriots. I don't know. This is a tough one. We'll see how Belichick tries to game plan for this with Lamar Jackson getting out of the pocket and everything. So I don't know. Maybe they'll probably try to force him to actually have to throw the ball. So I don't know. I'm excited to see that game. I think that one should be fun to watch. So on Sunday night. But anyways, other than that, I think there wasn't much to talk about in terms of trade deadline news. There was the news that the big breaking news, and I think everybody probably jumped to their phone whenever you got a notification today with Adam Schefter and thinking that it's going to be a trade. And it was actually just Andy Dalton has been benched. So the Bengals are saying, and their pursuit of the number 1 overall pick, and now they are starting Ryan Finley for the rest of the season.
It's just mean to bench a guy on his birthday. You couldn't wait till tomorrow. Like, just let him have it.
They're on bye. Like you couldn't like you just had to do it. Like it was just like, well, let's just shove that in a little further there, Andy.
Yeah, that was ruthless for sure. I mean, I like the move from a management standpoint. If you're Cincy, you're looking at I think it was an 11-32 record for Dalton over the last few seasons. you got to find out what you have in Finley before you spend super high draft capital on a quarterback next year, which I think they will. I mean, they're going to, in all likelihood, either pick one or two at this point. So they're either going to go for a Burrow or a Herbert or a Tua, but maybe Finley lights it up over the second half of the year. I don't think that's extremely likely. From a fantasy perspective, I don't think it's too much of a downgrade. I think that Dalton was playing pretty horrifically over the past 8 weeks. So the same guys that have been seeing the targets and getting the production like a Tyler Boyd will continue to do so. And then with AJ Green coming back, and that's interesting. I still don't think he's going to elevate to wide receiver 1 status, but not a big change from a fantasy perspective. If anything, more optimism just because we don't know Finley and he could be good.
Until they fix that offensive line, like
nobody's going to be going to be lighting it up back there because they're going to be getting hit so much.
I mean, it's not, neither of them are exactly doing any kind of evasive maneuvers and getting out of the pocket and, using their legs to create for themselves. So until that's fixed, man, they're gonna have a lot of trouble there no matter who they bring in.
Maybe Auden Tate won't have to make a miraculous catch every time the ball is thrown in his general direction anymore. Just a few normal ones instead of highlight reel catches. He was 5 for 12, by the way. 5 catches on 12 targets because none of them were remotely close to him. It's amazing he even caught the 5. He had to stretch out for all of them. That's Dalton in a nutshell. Making Auden Tate stretch out for miraculous catches because he's not accurate.
It just makes
it can only get better, right?
Yeah.
It just makes me so happy that Auden Tate and Allen Lazard are a thing this year. I had them so high in like my dynasty wide receiver ranks, and then they just did nothing.
I think it can get a hell of a lot worse than Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton has not been great by any means this year, but I mean, he's had some good games. Hell, I mean, his last game he just played against the Rams was a great game. He threw for 330 yards. He had a touchdown, no interceptions. Like, he was not the reason they lost to the Rams. And, and I don't know, this move to me seems more like a move that just because they're trying to tank. I mean, we saw against San Francisco where, San Francisco is one of the best defenses in the league, and he threw for over 300 yards against them and 2 touchdowns. So, like if Andy Dalton has time, Andy Dalton needs a good offensive line. Like, Andy Dalton can be an average to slightly above average quarterback. And I don't know, like this could be really bad for the rest of this offense because, like, not that there's a ton of like fantasy goodness coming from this offense, but if you look at it, like, I mean, they're number 1 in pass plays per game. They're number 1. He's number 1 in attempts. Like, if I would think that if they're going to go to Ryan Finley, that they're going to throttle that back. And if they do that, that is big problems because most of these guys are living off volume, like Auden Tate, like Tyler Boyd, and even Tyler Eifert had a good game this past week. But a lot of that's because of their volume that they're getting. And if they throttle that back, now that could be better news for like a Joe Mixon, but they're still running behind a terrible offensive line. That's not their fault. That's not Andy Dalton's fault that their offensive line is so anemic, and it's been this way for the past 2 or 3 seasons. And so I don't blame all this on Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton's definitely gone after this year, but Andy Dalton is definitely going to be starting for a team next year. Like, he's better than some of these quarterbacks that are on these other teams. Hell, I mean, I'm sure like a Denver could use an Andy Dalton. Like, Andy Dalton is a remarkable upgrade over like a Joe Flacco, which isn't saying a whole lot, but a team like Washington could use a quarterback. Like, to say that Andy Dalton, I think Andy Dalton's better than what most people give him credit for. Like, no, he's not an elite level quarterback, but so is a lot of quarterbacks aren't. Jared Goff is not an elite level quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. He's just lucky enough to be around and have one of the best offensive lines in the league, to be surrounded by as much weapons that he's had. And, like I said, like, there's a lot of quarterbacks people think that are good that just really, they're just average. And I think that's Andy Dalton. Like, Andy Dalton isn't the worst quarterback in the league. He's not Blake Bortles. It's just, he's a guy that has to have everything kind of, like I said, like, he needs to be protected. Like, he doesn't do well under pressure. And that's kind of always been his issue, is whenever you're able to provide him with time to throw, like, he can be an accurate passer and be a quarterback that could lead a team to 10, 11 wins, but everything kind of has to be going correctly for him. And they need to be surrounded by weapons. He's not, an elite level quarterback, and that's fine. He doesn't have to be. But to say that, in my opinion, like, I think there's a lot of narrative around him, like see on Twitter today or whatever, like he's trash, and I just don't. I don't buy into that. Sure, like I said, he's not elite, but there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league right now that aren't elite.
I agree with you. I think we at one point with Jared Goff, I mean, he has Sean McVay. And you look at what's happening in the NFL this year with all of these backup quarterbacks stepping in and performing extremely well. One thing they have in common is that they're coming into great situations. One guy I look at is Jacoby Brissett. Do you think that Andy Dalton is that much worse than Jacoby Brissett? I don't think so.
I don't even know if he's Brissett.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're going into a Frank Reich-led offense with the best offensive line in football. Like Dalton is thrown into these situations where he doesn't have a chance. And I think if you put, like to your point, a Jared Goff behind that Bengals offensive line with that Bengals coaching staff, albeit they made a move with Zach Taylor to, make it a little bit better on the quarterback and the offense as a whole from a play calling perspective. But it's not fair to Andy. And I think you're right. I think he will be starting for a team next year because I don't think he's objectively a bad quarterback by any means, just a bad situation.
I think the narrative comes just from any time the Bengals make it on to primetime television, like in an Island game, he shits his pants. Like, I can't remember what his record is. I'll see if I can pull it up quick. But his record in primetime games is just really, really bad. So I think that's where that narrative comes in. He does need a lot of things to go right for him. Like Kev was saying with the offensive line, with having weapons around him. I don't think he's trash. But I think this move is just indicative of seeing if they have anything in Finley. I mean, they drafted him this year. I don't think Andy Dalton is a, quote unquote franchise quarterback by any means. But I don't think he's as bad as he's made out to be a lot of the times.
5-19 in primetime games. So there you go.
But like I said, I mean, he's Derek Carr. He's Jared Goff. Like he's on that level of quarterback. Like, like you put him on the right situation with the right weapons around him, and he's going to succeed. But that's you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks. Derek Carr is the same way. Derek Carr, anytime he faces a good defense, he crumbles and he wilts. And that's Derek Carr. And that's the same thing as Jared Goff. Like I said it last year, people crushed me for it by saying that Jared Goff is overrated and Jared Goff's not nearly as good as people think he is, because every time they faced a solid defense, he crumbled and he looks like a disaster. And then that's what that's what he looked like in the Super Bowl last year. And then this year we've seen the same thing from him. Anytime these quarterbacks play and they get pressured, they just don't know what to do with themselves and they crumble. So I don't know. I wasn't planning on spending this long on Andy Dalton, but I don't know.
A lot of good fantasy analysis coming from this discussion.
Yeah, with a quarterback that's bench, though, probably won't see the field. Or when Ryan Finley gets knocked out of the game in the first quarter because their offensive line's so horrible, now Andy Dalton's back in the game. So, anyways.
I'm ready to start the rumor that Kev would rather have Andy Dalton than Pat Mahomes.
Right, and I think
on board.
Make it well known that Kev is Andy Dalton's biggest apologist.
Yes. How dare people disrespect the Red Rifle that way? I mean,
how dare they?
This man goes out there in a blood sport and puts his body and mind and soul and everything on the line every game. And all you people are just some evil sons of bitches who just want to talk down to him and just throw him out. So you know what? Enjoy your Joe Flacco's of the world and Ryan Fitzpatrick's that are starting. While Andy Dalton, is over here getting bludgeoned.
I think we need to change the name of the podcast to the Respect My Authority podcast now. I mean, Kevin's getting down here. Jeez.
Yeah, sometimes things get me a little fired up, and who knows? And you never know what it's going to be. Andy Dalton, hey, who knows? The Red Rocket. I have lots of respect. So anyway,
I'd say
I think we've went on long enough about Andy Dalton. So you know where I stand. Anyways, so let's move on to kind of what we want to talk about for tonight's show. Let's talk about some of the top plays for Week 9. Crazy, we're already Week 9. 5 weeks away to the fantasy playoffs. 5 weeks. It's getting a little spicy right now with things. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We will start here. Let me just take a look. We'll start with the quarterbacks. We'll kind of go position by position here, and let's go ahead and start with Ryan, tell me about the man you were previously discussing about the mustached man that you are excited to play this week.
Yes. I'll reveal his identity to no surprise. It's my boy Gardner Minshew. I think he's still criminally under-owned, rather not even just started, under-owned. He's only owned in 49% of ESPN leagues right now. Playing against Houston this week, who are 5th worst against the pass in the league. There's only one quarterback who scored at least 16 fantasy points in every game this season, in 7 of 8 games this season, and it's Gardner Minshew. And we're looking at those weapons on the outside with DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook. Chark especially has really emerged as a top threat this season. Minshew's still just QB 16 on the season, but as of late, he's been heating up. Over the last 4, he's QB 7. All of those facts lead me into having Minshew almost as a top 6 play this week. My spicy hot take of the week would be starting over Lamar Jackson against New England. I personally think when you look at Lamar's matchup, obviously the Patriots have the best defense in the league, and Bill Belichick likes to take away what he thinks can hurt him the most, which would be Jackson's legs, which is where a lot of his fantasy production comes from. So just one comparison there of somebody who I'd start, who Minshew would start over for me right now, as he's been lighting up the league with that mustache. And hopefully we'll see some costumes out with that stash come Thursday for Halloween. Who knows?
I love it.
Solid analysis. Love it. Okay. Thank you for that chime in there.
Well, we got Timmy Texelot over here not doing anything, so I figured I'd at least try and bridge that gap. Over here setting up your TFA dating app. I'm trying to keep this pod going as you're sliding into Andy Dalton's DMs as we speak.
There you go.
Hey, well, I mean, he's free now. Obviously, they're on bye. He doesn't really have anything to prepare for now. So I thought maybe I could, take him out to the bar. We have a couple beers. We discuss things, and we talk about his rise. His rise to rise from the ashes like a phoenix next year. Whenever he leads the team to the playoffs.
Speaking of Halloween costumes, I think that maybe a dye of the hair is in order. Throwing it on Dalton jersey. What do you think, Kev?
Hell yeah. Actually, you son of a bitch. I was sending out a text for the show to get people to come in. So, I'm trying to be multifaceted here. But, you've been doing this long enough. I figured you could just jump right in and keep it moving. But you can't. So, because you're basic. So, anyways, let's move on to the next one. Cody, you want to talk? So, how about you talk about your guy, Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I would love to do that as well. I will be going back to the Sam Darnold well here. After that game against Dallas, he has not looked good. But going up against Miami, the matchup is there. Football Outsiders has Miami's pass defense as dead last, and Pro Football Focus has their pass rushing grade as, you guessed it, dead last. So Andy Robinson, Jesus. Robbie Anderson obviously didn't go anywhere, so that keeps his ceiling higher. I don't think anybody went anywhere. Not having Chris Herndon hasn't been any sort of detriment to Darnold when he has been putting up fantasy points. So I think we are safe to go back to Sam Darnold as both a streamer and a safe start for Week 9. Going from one orange guy to another one.
Hey, what can I say? So let's jump over to Nate. Who is your quarterback?
Well, I was going to pick Ryan Finley, but it's a touchy subject on this pod apparently. So I'll pivot to Derek Carr. Derek Carr is facing my Detroit Lions, and let me tell you, that's a guarantee for fantasy production at the quarterback position. Last 2 weeks, they've given up 4 passing touchdowns to each of the average quarterbacks of Kirk Cousins and even Daniel Jones. So they've got a great chance to give up at least 3 again to Mr. Carr. He looked pretty good last week, and he seems to feast against lower tier defenses. So the Lions qualify, especially if Darius Slay is out, which it's looking like he will be, even though he wasn't traded today. I'm ready to start up Derek Carr. Speaking of Lamar Jackson, I think I'm going to start Derek Carr over Lamar Jackson this week.
Well, you said you're going to start Derek Carr over Lamar Jackson?
Thinking about it. I have that little faith in the Lions defense because I have to watch them every week.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit of a game, but I get it because I mean the Patriots defense are the 85 Bears, and so I don't know that one feels like I feel like that the Lions and Raiders game really has potential to be a shootout similar to what we saw last week with the Lions. So Matt Stafford has there was a lot of hate and disrespect put on that man's name, a lot like Andy Dalton heading into this year. Nobody drafted Matt Stafford this year. Like, Matt Stafford was an afterthought. Nobody cares about Matt Stafford, and I mean he's balled this year.
Fun fact, my tryout article for this very website was about how you should draft Matthew Stafford. Maybe we should have published it, Ken.
Did we not?
I don't think we ever did.
Why would we have not published it? I have to check. We need to fact check that. Big facts, okay?
Re-release it. Get the information out there for the people. Those Lions fans are itching to read it.
Right. Well, Darrell Bevell passing down the field is a good idea suddenly. I mean, it's like the year off opened his eyes to the modern NFL. So, hey, I like it. Matt Stafford looks awesome. Helps when there's absolutely nobody who could run the ball, though.
I mean, I think the hate for Stafford came from Bevell coming in. They thought they were going to be a run-first offense, and that's what they said they were going to do all offseason anyway. You know what I mean? So, like, you couldn't really have that much faith in him, but I mean, outside of last year, for fantasy purposes anyway, that was his first down year in a handful of seasons. And, Nate, like you said, weird. You throw the ball downfield and you get to rack up the stats.
Well, yeah. So it's been good to see Stafford. I mean, I thought it was crazy. I thought he was a great, late round quarterback to have this year, and he's not proving me wrong. So let's. I guess there's one more person to talk about. Theirs and mine, of course, is Jameis Winston. They are traveling to Seattle this week, which is tough. The one thing with Jameis is, you don't know how many interceptions he's going to throw or turnovers he's going to have. So. The last 2 games he's played has been pretty brutal in that department. I think last week he had 3 turnovers, but after the game, Bruce Arians did come out and say that it was none of it was his fault. It was the receiver's fault. So, anyways, this week they do take on Seattle. Like we already talked about. Seattle has not been good against opposing quarterbacks so far this year. They've allowed the 3rd most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks. And, hell, even our very own Andy Dalton that we talked about lit them up week 1 for over 400 yards passing. And so, I think this is a good spot for Jameis. It is on the road. It is a tough place to play. Seattle is historically kind of been a tough place to play, but their defense is definitely not as good as what we've seen in years past. So I think this game has some shootout potential as well. So I have no problem with playing Jameis. I have him as a top 12 quarterback this week, probably inside the top 10. For me in this game. So I think this is one that you can target. As we've seen with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they continue to feast, and OJ Howard is still there, though I don't know if anybody would know it because he hasn't played or because he was out this past week and he doesn't get targeted. So other than that, I do think that he is definitely a quarterback to start, even though there is some concern with his turnover, how turnover prone he's been, but they continue to throw the ball. So, I think this game has some shootout potential with Russell Wilson as well. So, I really like Jameis Winston this week. You guys have any other quarterbacks, or do you guys want to jump over to the running back position?
Let's keep it going.
All right. So, again, it was Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew, Sam Darnold, and Jameis Winston as 4 quarterbacks you could start. Likely all 3 of them could be available in your fantasy leagues. And though Jameis Winston probably isn't, though, if you're in a league that really hammers you for turnovers, he might become available. Has as many turnovers as he's had the last 2 weeks. But okay, so let's jump over to the running backs. Why don't we switch it up? Cody, who's a running back you like this week?
Now, I need to start this off by saying there weren't a lot of non-stud running back plays like I really loved and like really felt great about. But I will go with James White going up against Baltimore. That just has the feeling of a James White game. You know what I mean? Their strength is obviously in the secondary. They just picked up Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Earl Thomas being the free safety lord on the back end. This just has the feeling of a James White game to me. Sony Michel, if he doesn't score 3 touchdowns, he's getting you 7 points from his 1 touchdown and 10 yards that he's getting on 23 carries. So I don't think they're going to be able to just slam James White into that. I mean, Sony Michel into that line over and over again. And this is going to be something like a storyline I'm really looking forward to, just to see how good that defense is, because they haven't really faced an offense and a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. So maybe this one has a sneaky shootout potential. But this has a feeling of a James White game. And unfortunately, when you're picking a New England running back, you kind of have to go with, well, does this feel like a Sony Michel game or a Brandon Bolden or a James White? And I'm going to put my stamp on James White.
Yeah, we really haven't had one yet so far this year, at least a legitimate game where I think you can look at James White as sort of being that kind of game for him. So, yeah, I don't mind that at all. We'll see what happens with this week, how Bill Belichick decides to attack the Ravens and their defense. So, but regardless, anyways, Nate, who is your running back?
So I'm in on Buffalo running backs, but specifically I'm going to single out Devin Singletary. Washington is not a good matchup. I got a feeling that Buffalo is going to be up big in this one, which means that they're going to give the running back some work. Singletary's been more of the pass-catching running back in this group so far. He played over 70% of the snaps last week in a game that they were losing. But that may have also been indicative of him having his health fully back. So I'm going to buy into the narrative that Buffalo wants to give him the ball more, and that will mean passes out of the backfield, and it will hopefully mean a few more touches as carries. So I'm buying into Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I like that call. I think, Singletary missed, a few weeks, but I came back last week and played, I think it was 70% of the snaps. Now, a lot of that could be due to game script because they got down pretty quickly to the Eagles, and they really needed to, Singletary is much more of the pass catching back, so that could have something to do with it. But I do think that Singletary is much more explosive. And I think moving forward, I think we could continue to see that where, I think Frank Gore becomes the change of pace back and Singletary just kind of takes over as the starter, because it was kind of really a big week for all rookie running backs this past week where Miles Sanders exploded. David Montgomery finally had a big game. Who would have thought, maybe you feed this guy finally and maybe see what happens. I don't know. Crazy things happen. They should have won that game, but, Nagy's an idiot and decided to let's just waste the last 45 seconds of the clock and not try to get closer, see what happens. No. All right. And then, Josh Jacobs has been playing very well as well. So we're finally seeing something from these rookie running backs. So anyways, so yeah, I really like that call. I think Singletary is somebody that, that I would definitely be looking at the very least as a flex option on a weekly basis. And so what? Something?
Oh, I was just going to add that I'd rather have 6 targets for Devin Singletary than 12 carries for Frank Gore. So between the two, I'm definitely going to lead him. So,
And it's not like Buffalo is a team that's gonna jump out on you and be up 35-0. So I mean, Singletary should still get work, and the Redskins are giving up the second most catches to running backs behind the Texans. So if Singletary is going to be involved in the passing game, this would be a good game to do it.
So let's go ahead and jump over to old Ryan. Who do you got this week?
I like Royce Freeman. I know there was a lot of hype last year coming into the year that he was going to supplant that Broncos backfield, and then we all know what happened with Phillip Lindsay. But this year, when looking at snap counts, Royce has actually led in snap counts out of 6 out of 8 weeks so far over Phillip Lindsay. And this week they have a tasty Browns matchup on deck. I'm not saying he's going to be an RB1 by any means, but he's somebody that I'm looking to fill in on a pretty heavy bye week with TD upside, maybe a 14 carry, 50-yard for a touchdown type game, putting in that low end RB2 range. Again, the Browns are pretty weak against the run. I think Denver wants to keep it on the ground, especially with Joe Flacco not playing because of a mysterious neck injury after he talked shit on his head coach at the podium. We'll let that one be by the wayside, but I really like Royce Freeman this week against the Browns.
Yeah, I don't know. Joe Flacco, which I don't disagree with what he was saying there.
I think he was right.
What are you doing there, Denver? Trying to be all conservative, but it is what it is. So yeah, now they have Brandon Allen, I think now is a starting quarterback there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That what could possibly go wrong with that? Well, why not Drew Lock?
On the ground.
Their first round pick, or what? No, not first. He was a second round pick, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But Drew Lock is ready, and why not give him an opportunity? Just gonna let Brandon Allen see what he's got. They've said that Drew Lock's been ready the last 2 weeks, but they still haven't activated him. So I don't know what they're doing. But John Elway's a terrible GM anyway. He should have been fired a long time ago, but he's living off the name. And now I think there's been talk of like Peyton Manning and trying to get him as the GM there. So not that I don't know if he wants any part of that, but anyways. So before we jump on to the old wide receivers, let's jump into running back I have. Now, this is kind of a caveat. Mine is Jalen Samuels. This really is going to depend on what goes on with James Conner. We know he got knocked out of the game on Monday night. It's kind of a short turnaround for them. So it sounds like they said he's day-to-day, but he's going to be more of a game-time decision this week. We'll see how things go with like an AC joint sprain. The thing is with James Conner is I feel like even if he plays, like I definitely think Jalen Samuels is going to have a role. I do believe that Benny Snell also got banged up. So right now, Jalen Samuels is in line for, I think even at worst, I think he's going to have a role in this offense this week. So I like this matchup for him. And I think that, Jalen Samuels at the very least, I think he's a solid flex play, but if James Conner is out, like he is squarely in line for RB1 or not as an RB1 this week.
Yeah, for sure. And then the thing with Conner too is, even if he's able to play through it, his running style, he's just such a violent dude. Like, he doesn't try and make guys miss. He's always lowering his shoulder and just trying to run through dudes. And those injuries are starting to mount up. So even if Samuels doesn't get like a crazy workload this week, he's someone who's been widely available on waivers after being dropped whenever he had an injury of his own. So I like that Samuels call.
Connor's injury is supposedly similar to the Josh Jacob injury, so they may give him that shot pre-game and just tell him to go through it. But like you said, I think it's going to be limited touches. He's not going to get 27 total touches like he did last week.
And what were they doing anyway? They did it in garbage time. Like, pull him out. I know that Benny Snell was hurt, but like, let Edmonds go out there then and just wrap up the game. What are you doing, Pittsburgh? I don't know. But anyways, so before we jump over to the old wide receivers, let's hit up some of these wide receiver questions that we have real quick. We have one from Steven Krupka. Is Amendola the real deal? Need a target breakdown? Will they be consistent moving forward?
Hello, Steve. Great question. We're talking about your Detroit Lions there, Nate. I think this week he's a great matchup. He's consensus ranked wide receiver 55 for some reason on Fantasy Pros. Obviously, Oakland third worst pass defense in terms of yards allowed per game right now. And we're taking a look at Detroit's snap share. He's been on the field over 65% of the time over the last 2 weeks. And over those same last 2 weeks, he is the wide receiver 10 with 19 targets, 16 grabs, 200 yards, no touchdowns. So being the wide receiver 10 without any touchdowns is pretty impressive. My hot take is I think he sees a TD this week. I think the targets are still there. I think Stafford loves going to him. I think they air it out. I think the over hits in this game. So to answer your question, he is the real deal, at least for this week. I need to see probably a couple more weeks of consistent target data, but from what we've seen over the last couple, I think it's legit, and you can be playing him in the flex with confidence.
I would probably only play him in a PPR league just because he's not getting downfield targets the way Galladay and Marvin Jones are. But at the same time, they are. He got banged up in that Philly game, which is why he kind of had a down week the following week. But he is being used more as the underneath guy, and they're leaving Hawkinson in to block more because he's not really being the pass catcher they wanted to. It always takes a little time with rookie tight ends. So in a PPR, he's a great matchup because I guarantee he's going to see 8 or 9 targets again because he's the underneath option. So, yeah, I agree with you. But in a standard league, he doesn't have a ton of value because he's not going to be a guy they pass to near the goal line.
I completely agree. We saw this before, too, with like week 1. I think he was heavily targeted as well. So it's definitely a PPR-only type of play. And I mean, we do have this week that is kind of a heavy bye week, and then next week there's 6 teams on bye. So, and then so it just really depends on what your other options are. But Amendola is not a terrible play in PPR leagues, so I think he's more Cole Beasley-ish, but I think he probably presents more value than that because they are more of a passing offense, where I think they're 13th in pass attempts this year. So. Yeah, I mean, I think he's viable, but not somebody that I would bank on to give you a huge ceiling. I think he's more of a floor play. So, all right. So, jump on to the next one from Josh Twinter. Winston, Dak, or Stafford need 2. So, who would you guys go with?
I'll go Dak and Stafford on that one. I just feel like safer options, and I think they all have about the same ceiling. But with sitting Winston, you're taking out a lot of the interception and turnover worries. So I'll go Dak and Stafford with those 2.
Yeah, I think those are both top 5 plays, Dak and Stafford. I think Winston, to your point, Kev, is the top 10 play this week, but you're getting the downside with the negative potential with the picks and the fumbles, turnovers in general. So I'd roll with Dak and Stafford, and I think you're in really good shape to win. I'm assuming it's a super flex type league because both of those matchups on paper are pristine.
I'd go Stafford just because I love the over-under on the Detroit-Oakland game. It's 52.5, so they're predicting a shootout, in which case it's all going to be Stafford. There are no running backs on Detroit who scare you. It's going to be won or lost on Stafford's arm.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because it's Stafford, I think, is a lock, but the Dak one, like I could see a scenario where they get up in this game and kind of take over and just lean on the run with Zeke on Monday Night Football. But I don't know. I think I would agree. Probably lead Dak and Stafford. I think those are your best bets to play because would anybody be surprised one bit if Winston goes out and throws 4 interceptions? So I wouldn't because what keeps happening. So usually every game he kind of starts out in -2, -3 because I own him in a couple of leagues, and it's like, oh, this is turning out fantastic. Okay, here we go. So, but then he ends up getting a couple late touchdowns and saving my bacon, as they will. So, anyways, I think we're all in agreement there. And then the last one: if Mahomes can't go, should I play Allen or Jackson? From Jim.
I'd go Allen here. Like I said earlier, I'm starting guys like Gardner Minshew and Josh Allen over Jackson this week. I just think what we've seen from Bill Belichick over his tenure with New England, especially involving the defense, is he likes to take away what you're the best at. And I think what they're the best at is creating running plays for Lamar Jackson. They're going to contain him in that way. I think New England wins pretty handily on Sunday night. I think Josh Allen provides you with a really good floor with his rushing ability. He's averaging over 30 rushing yards per game. Not that heavy in the passing yardage department. I think he's hovering around that 250, 260 range. And Washington isn't that bad against the pass. They're ranked, I think, firmly in the middle of the league. But I still think that Allen has more upside, more floor, especially with that matchup against New England and Jackson. So I go Allen.
Agree. This is all about the matchup.
Oh man.
I mean, to me, this is one of those ones where, I mean, this is how I tend to set a lot of my lineups anyways. I'll kind of look at who I'm playing and try and get a feel for, if I feel like I'm going in, as a big underdog or not. So to me, this is one of those ones where I'm going to look at my opponent. If I need the upside, I'm going to take the chance with Lamar. But if I just need a safe floor, I'll go Allen. Because like we were just talking about, I don't think the Bills, even though they're playing Washington, it's not like they're going to go out and just have Allen sling it 45 times. You know what I mean? Have him put up 300 plus yards and a couple touchdowns. But he, the matchup is there for him to have a solid outing. So if you need the safe floor with, probably looking at 20, 22 points out of him in your typical league. Whereas with Allen, he's so, with Lamar anyway, he's just so valuable with his legs. So that's how I would try and break that one down.
I guess we'll see how this turns out because I'm going to go Lamar Jackson.
I knew it.
Well, to your point, exactly what you just kind of talked about. I think that's my issue with playing Josh Allen. I don't think he really needs to do a whole lot to be able to beat the Redskins. And if Case Keenum doesn't play and we see Dwayne Haskins play, that's a bloodbath. Dwayne Haskins looks lost right now. And granted, short sample size, but I don't know. I haven't seen much from him to say that he really knows even what's going on out there. Maybe they'd be better off starting Colt McCoy if he's healthy. So I don't know, but would be a big blow in my opinion. If you have a Terry McLaurin or something like that, who has been decent, but I think with Haskins, some of what we saw last week, once Haskins came in, it was over for McLaurin. So. So I think that's why I would play Lamar Jackson. I think there's more opportunity there, and I think they both carry the same upside in terms of their rushing ability. So while one has the better matchup, I just think the ceiling isn't as high, in my opinion.
Yeah, no matter which way you cut it with Washington, no matter how you look in terms of whether they're playing ahead or behind or neutral, they are close to last in almost all those scenarios in pace of play. And like we were talking about, it's not like Buffalo's a high-tempo offense either. So you could be looking at low volume to begin with. And then, like we were talking about, you're not going to have Josh Allen going out there and slinging the rock 40 times a game either. So floor, Allen, upside, Lamar.
All right. So real quickly, Travis Russell, have Coleman, Chubb, and Aaron Jones. Only can start 2 running backs. Who should I start?
I'm going Chubb and Jones here. I love Coleman, and he absolutely blew up last week with the 4 touchdowns, but he still only he touched the ball less than 15 times. And I know that the Niners are dealing with some injuries in their running back core, but I still think that Shanahan doesn't like to use primarily just one running back. So this could be a game in which we see a Jeff Wilson Jr. garner some of the touches in the backfield. That doesn't mean that Coleman doesn't have great upside. I still have him as a top 15 play this week, but I think that Chubb and Aaron Jones are both top 10 plays for me and have, a more defined workload than Coleman at this point. I think that Jeff Wilson Jr. With Breida and Mostert a little banged up could see some touches in this game.
I think Jeff Wilson got hurt today.
Was it today?
Yeah.
God, they are decimated back there.
Practice today. So yeah,
He
they're hurting.
He was evaluated for a concussion, but I guess it came out that it was, quote, just a stinger, and he was never actually put into the protocol. But he's obviously in danger of missing the game.
Yeah, Thursday night game. So
yeah.
That's tough. I mean, I think it is Chubb, and I think it's Aaron Jones. It's really hard to sit either one of them. They both, I mean, really Chubb without those two. I mean, those two fumbles were huge for him. So
Here's a bold prediction: Tevin Coleman in line for some touchdown regression this week. Put it on the board. Hold me to that one.
You
What a
need
hot
to,
take.
you
What a
need
hot
to
take.
settle down, sir.
I know. They're just getting hotter and hotter.
got a question from Neil. Howard and Sanders both available in full PPR. Who do you like rest of the year?
My gut tells me Sanders, man. I don't know.
Oh, boy.
Nate, you know a little bit more than me in terms of the running back touches, but I just think Sanders is so talented, and you see flashes, especially in the receiving ability. That's a benefit that it's full PPR, but I just lean Sanders. I think that Howard is just, I just can't see him continuing on, just the even slight trajectory that he's going on right now. I prefer Sanders.
It's 100% Sanders for me. I shoot for upside with everything, and we saw it on full display. He's definitely the best running back that they have there in Philly, so I'm definitely Sanders. Especially PPR and his involvement in the passing game, so it's easily Sanders for me. Anybody disagree? Anybody on the Howard side?
I mean, I think you can make the argument for Howard if you needed, like, if you were really hurting at running back. He's at least getting the touches. He's getting the rushes. Sanders has only been involved in the passing game, so if you needed somebody with like an RB2 kind of ceiling, I mean, I guess I could see the case for Howard. It depends on how much you're hurting at the running back position. If you need somebody to fill in, but if you don't need that spot, it's definitely Sanders. If you're shooting for upside, the answer is 1,000% Sanders. But I could see, depending on his roster and how that's made up, if he needed somebody to plug in just to get, the rushes, I could see Howard in that spot. But in a vacuum, I do agree, Sanders.
Okay, hedge life strikes again.
And again, it's not binary, right? He said they're available. He would have to drop somebody. So, I mean, do you really want to get involved in this annoying Philadelphia backfield headache? You'd have to if you're dropping nobody, sure, grab Sanders for the upside. But if you're dropping somebody usable, I would just avoid it and let somebody else deal with that landmine.
Well, so while I typically agree, it would have to be. I would have to know one, like, who the bench is, because if it's like a typical bench, it's not like the other gentleman that asks questions every week. That it's just absolutely stacked. Like, if that's the case, okay. But if it's more typical 10, 12 team type of league, which I can't imagine both of them being available, so it probably isn't. But just really depending on who he had, because Miles Sanders has RB1 type upside rest of the season, and. So I don't know. Like, it would be pretty easily Miles Sanders for me, because I think we know what Jordan Howard is, and so that's why. But for me, that's all I care about in terms of fantasy football. I really don't care about the floor at all. I'm always looking for ceiling, and I think that's what Miles Sanders brings. I think we all pretty much knew that Miles Sanders was the best running back in this backfield. I still think Miles Sanders is the best running back from this class, and so it's hard to trust that Doug Peterson is going to do the right thing and give Miles Sanders, 15 to 20 touches per game. But I think just banking on upside, I think that's where I would go there. But anyways, all right. So let's finish this out. Let's hit up our wide receivers. Nate, who you have Robbie Anderson down here. Hard not to like him, especially going against Miami.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think he's happy not to be traded, at least based on his tweet where he tweeted the "I'm not leaving" from Wolf of Wall Street. So I think this is all about matchup. He's been seeing over 90% of the snaps. He's seen 6 to 8 targets each of the last 3 weeks, and those targets are not simple targets. He's going down the field, so he's got huge upside against a very, very bad Miami defense. So I think this is, like I said, a ceiling play, and I would plug him in against a bad Miami defense.
Yeah, I mean, I love Robbie Anderson. I think Robbie Anderson, especially over the next 6 weeks, like 6 or 7 weeks, I think the buying window is now for him and before this week, because I think that there's a real opportunity here. We see this team take a big step forward, or at least you hope. I mean, the Jaguars did Sam Darnold real dirty last week. Did you guys see that they played Ghostbusters in the stadium in a blooper montage of Sam Darnold while they were playing it? I'm like, that.
Oh my god!
I saw the mascot dressed up as a ghost. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah,
Oh,
that man has a family. Damn it.
I love Sammy, and that's I feel bad for him. His response though was nice. He had said, "If I'm worried about that, about his comments on Monday Night Football, if I'm worried about that, then I'm not worried about the right things." I think he's going to be a leader. They're going to be okay down the stretch. And today was rough for the Jets too. But yeah, the Jags are ruthless, man.
Yeah, it's like the Jags of all people. Like you don't have that kind of like swag to be able to come out here.
Minshew, baby, he's added life to the whole organization. Swagger.
Like, and the best part about it though was like their stadium was completely fucking empty. Like, there. I'm like, oh, the 12 people that were there got to see it. Cool. You know, like, I don't know.
Well, if the stadium was empty, though, does that mean that Darnold saw a stadium full of people?
Hey, you know.
Just real quick though, my entire problem with that whole thing is like, as like just fans, analysts, whoever, like we're allowed to sit there and be like, oh, he's seeing ghosts, man. Like he's just making all the wrong reads. Like we're allowed to say that, and then Darnold comes out and he's like, actually, you know what? I am seeing ghosts. Everyone's like, oh my god, can you believe he said that? Like that whole thing, I just didn't understand. Like we can sit there and make whatever comments we want to make, and then like he actually comes out and says what everyone is thinking, and it ended up being like the biggest deal in the world. I don't know, man. I didn't get it.
I agree with you, man. The media loves to make a story out of anything. I think that's the whole gist of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was dirty. They did them dirty there, but
That's
karma
awesome.
will come back for them soon on that deal. So, Ryan, little Golden Tate action here. What's and you are very convicted with on Golden Tate. Tell us why you love him so much against Dallas.
I am very convicted on Golden Tate. And I will say that this is a tough matchup on paper. Dallas' slot corner ranks in the top 5 for PFF, but I still think that Tate is going to eat this week and then just going forward. He's tied for 6th in the league in targets over the last 2 weeks, 28% target share over that span. And over his last 3, he's played on almost 100% of the Giants' snaps. I think it took a couple of weeks for him, once dealt with that suspension, to develop some rapport with the offense with Jones. But I think week to week, he's just going to continue to improve. And with Shepard still banged up, he's still week to week with that concussion still in the protocol there. I think Tate is going to see volume no matter what. I think the upside is capped just a little bit because of how good Dallas is against the pass. They're top 10 in terms of passing yards per game. And like I mentioned, their slot corner is very good, but I still think that Tate finds a way to muster up a 10 target type game, maybe 9 catches. Again, more of that same Amendola type of mold where you're looking to play him in a PPR matchup for sure.
Well, I'll jump on to the other side of the ball here, or the other side of the team, and I will go with for me, it's Michael Gallup. To start the year, he really, the first 2 weeks, he played very well, really the first couple of weeks. And then he got hurt. He came back week 5 against Green Bay, and had 7 receptions, 113 yards. But then after that, these last 2 weeks have not been or prior to their bye week, have not been as good. Though I will say the first 2 weeks, the snap share was 79% and then 65%. Then from week 5 on, it's been 93%, 95, and 85%. Though he is not running as many routes, which is somewhat concerning because he went from 40 to 36, and only 21 routes last week 7 against Philly, which is, as we know, a very pass funnel there in Philadelphia. But I do like this matchup for him. I think after the bye, kind of give him some more rest. I think they come back, and I think that the that the Cowboys can really put it on the Giants here. And I think that, as we've seen that, they can definitely be thrown upon. Janoris Jenkins is horrible. And so I do like Michael Gallup this week. I think he's a solid wide receiver 3 flex option this week. So, and then I guess last but not least, Cody, who is your wide receiver?
I'm going to take it all the way back to the offseason whenever we had Lauren Carpenter on and we were talking about our favorite late round dart throws. And it is time for Chris Conley. He's coming through with the injuries. I mean, Marquise Lee going to IR doesn't really matter, but Dede Westbrook, he went into that game questionable, but ultimately suited up. But then he left after he re-aggravated the neck, shoulder injury that he had. Any time this year that Chris Conley has gotten over 7 targets, he's put up a solid amount of numbers. Week 1, 7 targets, he went 697-1. Week 7 against Cincinnati, he had 8 targets, went 3 for 83. Then obviously last week he saw 7 targets, went 4 for 103 and 1. Obviously the matchup doesn't scare you. We already talked about Minshew earlier, so Chris Conley, I am all aboard this week.
Nice. I do like that play. Chris Conley has had some pretty big weeks so far this year. Had the 70-yard touchdown, played very well. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a solid one, but widely available in most leagues as well. So not many people have jumped on the Chris Conley bandwagon. And I think some of it, too, with just the Jaguars in general, that I feel like it's just the Jaguars. And people still look at them like a terrible passing offense. And a lot of people have PTSD from Blake Bortles and just haven't really embraced this passing offense because, as we know, DJ Shark has been solid. Minshew Mania has been running wild, and so he's been able to make multiple wide receivers relevant as well. So I think there's at least a lot to like here, especially if some of these wide receivers sit like a Dede Westbrook and Marquise Lee sit this week. So let's just jump into the tight end position, and let's start with Ryan.
So I like the other tight end in Philadelphia. I think Zach Ertz has had a kind of a rough going. I know that he was on a couple of lists as far as someone that we would pick to regress, but let me read you the weeks 6 through 8 tight end splits for Philly. Ertz, 165 snaps, 17 targets, 19.2 PPR points. Goddard, 135 snaps, 16 targets, and 37.9 PPR points. He set season highs in snaps and snap rate in week 8. And per Sharp Football Stats, Philly runs the 12 personnel at the second highest rate in the league, 12 personnel having 2 tight ends on the field. Obviously, we've seen some scoring regression positively for Goddard over the past few weeks, but I still think that he's a solid top 12 play this week. I think that objectively he could be better than Ertz, and I think that's not that hot of a take to say at this point. His PFF grade is higher. Obviously, that takes into account run blocking, which I think he is better than Ertz at. But I think even when you just put on, the game, you can see that really he jumps off the screen. I think he's really going to assert himself as the main option at tight end going forward for Philly. And Jim agrees here. Look in the comments. Zach Ertz is killing my fantasy team this year. I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah, it's been tough with him. But I think a lot of people, we got to talk about it over the offseason, that Zach Ertz was a prime regression candidate. And, it's kind of come to fruition. Now, some of it's not been because of what I thought would have been, because I felt like with all the added weapons that they had, that the target share wouldn't be the same. But, I mean, with all the injuries they've had at wide receiver, that necessarily hasn't really been the case. They just haven't really, utilized them as a lot of people thought they would. And, Deshaun Jackson, I guess they said he returned to practice, or he's supposed to practice limited this week, so he could be eligible to return. So he's somebody that once he comes back, it's just another guy there involved. So I don't know what's going to happen with Zach Ertz. I don't know if anybody would be surprised if he's not playing for Philadelphia after this year, especially with the rise of Dallas Goedert. It just would make sense for them to kind of move on from him. I don't know if it's going to be something they cut or maybe they look to trade him, but, I think that's certainly in the realm of possibility. So anyways, okay, so let's Nate, who do you got?
I got Jonnu Smith. This basically comes down to Delaney Walker's health. Anytime Delaney Walker is out, Jonnu Smith is a top 10 tight end. Ever since the end of last year, he's been a solid addition. And here's another thing. Ryan Tannehill loves targeting the tight end. You might remember back when Charles Clay was a Miami Dolphin. He was a top 5 tight end those years with Ryan Tannehill. So Tannehill will look for his tight ends, and Jonnu Smith, if he's the only man out there, he's the one he's going to be looking for. He's only running a route on about 50% of his snaps, so he is splitting time a little bit, but he's the more dynamic pass catcher of the 2 tight ends, and I would be okay plugging him in as a streamer tight end.
Yeah, and he's coming off that pretty big game last week. 6 for 80, I think, and a touchdown last week. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like there with Jonnu. It's going to really come down to. I think he's going to be a kind of a big waiver ad this week too, especially at the tight end position. That's been such a dumpster fire this year. So, anyways, Cody, who do you got?
I'm going to roll with Noah Fant going up against Cleveland. We're going to have the narrative of the backup quarterback throwing to the tight end going for him.
Oh. Did we lose him?
I thought it was me there for a second. So
So did I. I was looking to see if I froze on the screen. We might have lost him.
oh, and that's like the best. Like, look at this face here we got going on here, like the O face and everything. So
Ready to deliver a hot take. Look at that.
I'm screenshotting that. That's the official logo of Hedge Life right there.
There you go.
that is amazing. All right. Anyways, okay. So Noah Fant, I do like that call. I think I know where he was going with it. But Noah Fant, the last couple of weeks has gotten a little bit more involved in the offense as well. And now I think you kind of saw. Oh, there he goes. Gone forever. R.I.P.
Good thing you brought on two scrubs onto the podcast, or you'd be doing this solo right now, Kev. You know.
I know that would have been interesting. Solo pod time, but yeah, Noah Fant's good. I think that's another place you can go to, especially after the Emmanuel Sanders trade. We all want Deshaun Hamilton to be a thing, but it doesn't look like Denver wants him to be a thing. So because they're just not utilizing him at all as a pass catcher. So he's out there. He's running some routes, but he's not getting targeted. So, anyways, for me, it's T.J. Hockenson. Some of the ones I wanted to go with, I was definitely wanted to go with Jonnu, but then somebody took him. And then Noah Fant was another one, and somebody already had him. So I went with T.J. Hockenson here. He is running routes. He has not, been the man that we saw earlier in the season, that big 25 fantasy point production that week 1 against Arizona. But I think with him, I think really what you look for is a touchdown, really more than anything. If he can get utilized inside the red zone, because as any tight end, we know if you can get 6 to 10 points, you are pretty happy. And he is a big red zone target. He still is 13th in the league among tight ends, and with 31 targets, he is running a route on 60% of his snaps. So there's lots of there is. I think there's more to come from him. I think that his future is very bright. But I think at least just for this one game against Oakland, I think this is a place you can go as sort of a bye week fill in. Like for me, I'm actually looking at maybe adding him in a league where I have Austin Hooper, and I'm looking for something to do, a player to go with. He is available, so I thought about going with him. But again, like I think that you're hoping for maybe 2 or 3 catches, 30 yards and a touchdown. If you get that, I think you're thrilled. So anyways, all right. I think that's it for the starts. Let's do a couple sits here. And we will, and then wrap this thing up. So as far as sits, these are the little bit more bold calls, I guess, because a lot of people don't want to talk about players to sit. Anyways, let's start with Nate. What quarterback are you sitting this week?
I'm sitting Kyler Murray against San Francisco. San Francisco's defense looks outstanding. Kyler Murray's coming off a game where he got benched, and he doesn't have any of his old reliable faces in the backfield. I think this game is going to fall on him, and he's not ready for the moment quite yet, which means he's bound to throw a few through interceptions and probably get sacked a few times. So when the pressure comes on Kyler, he tends to make some mistakes at this point in his young career. So as a result, I am benching Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I like that call. Kyler Murray really his most of his production really has come off his legs. Like, he has not really been a terrific pass catcher so far, and really it's gotten worse the last couple of weeks. Like, Larry Fitzgerald has been non-existent. Really, Charles Clay has been more of a, involved in the offense than, Larry Fitzgerald. Christian Kirk's been okay, but, overall, like, this just isn't a great matchup, and I don't see him going out and balling against the 49ers, but especially on a short week, even though they are home. Ryan, who's the quarterback that you are avoiding this week?
So I have been talking about him pretty much all podcast, but it's Lamar Jackson against New England. Again, I just had a hunch that I think Bill Belichick and co are going to completely shut the Ravens down. I think they won't be able to get any of what they are looking for on the grounds, including those designed runs for Jackson. I think he's going to have to air it out. I think he's going to make some mistakes. We know how likely it is for New England to score a defensive touchdown, to get turnovers in this game. So I'm sitting Jackson if I can find even a Jameis Winston, for example, who's out on the wire in some leagues. I'd rather start Winston over a Jackson type this week. I know the upside is there for me, but also a big downside in what I think could be a dismantling of that Baltimore offense. But we'll see.
That one's tough. So let me ask you then, who would you start? Would you start Derek Carr over him?
That's like the line where it starts to get interesting for me. I would say no. I think I draw the line at a Jameis Winston. I like Carr. I think the matchup is perfect on paper, the best in Detroit's pass defense. But I don't see Carr. But I mean, I think Carr's going to put up 200 yards and 2 TDs, and I think Jackson does have the ceiling still. I think Winston has a higher ceiling than Carr. So if I'm going ceiling, I'm going a guy like Winston, Jackson over Carr. What about you?
I mean, I would probably go Winston, or I would go probably. So Lamar Jackson, I would probably still start Lamar Jackson over
Winston, over Carr.
Okay. His ability to, he can rip off a 70-yard touchdown at any time of the game. Those big gains that he's is able to do. I do think that Baltimore will be able to scheme different situations for him to be able to use his legs, and we will see what they're able to do there. But would you start Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones over him?
No, I don't think so. I'd start with Jackson.
This is borderline QB1 for you then.
Yeah, borderline QB1. I think he's still consensus ranked in the top 6 per Fantasy Pros right now. Yeah, QB6 right now. I'd have him more in like that 11-12 range. So guys like a Kirk Cousins, I'd rather start over him. Josh Allen, Winston, probably drawing the line at a Carr, Darnold, Jones.
Okay. So for me, I think mine is more matchup based. It'd probably be Carson Wentz. And I just don't love this matchup against Chicago. I do think Chicago's defense is good enough to stifle Philadelphia and what they want to do. And still kind of remains, I think that to really beat Chicago, you want to establish the run. And so I just don't love Carson Wentz. There's a lot of quarterbacks that I'd probably look to play over him this week. A lot of the guys we've already talked about, the streaming options that are out there, like Carr, Darnold. I'd even consider like a Daniel Jones over him, maybe a Phillip Rivers, depending on game scripts and how things could go there. So I don't know. I just think there's some better matchups here to play over him. And so he's somebody this week that I would look to probably sit and try to stream somebody over him. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. And let's start with Ryan.
Yeah, so mine's Sony Michel. I think Cody touched on a little bit of it at the beginning of the show, but I think this is going to be more of a, oh, there he is. Is that, oh, he's a clown. Oh, man, I love it. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you.
You had your frozen O face stuck on the screen there for a minute. It was epic.
I like this look better than that, though, even.
Yeah, Nate sent me the screenshot, so I figured I'd take something to distract from my fucking nose that's running crooked across the screen.
Halloween came a little bit early, huh?
You know, I was to say with Halloween in a couple of days, we really dropped the ball. We could have like dressed up or something. You know, we all dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, this seemed appropriate.
There you go. Yeah, we should have came in costume. That Minshew costume, man. Next time. But yeah, running backs of the week, Sony Michel. Again, I don't think that Baltimore defense is stingy by any means. I think it's more off of name brand than it is in actual talent. But for rushing, they're allowing the third least rushing yards per game, just behind Tampa Bay in New Orleans. I think Michel, in order to produce, has to find the end zone. And I just don't think he does in this game. I think that it is more of a James White game. I think he gets out snapped in that case. So I'm benching Michel.
Yeah, and the weird one and that you mentioned there is the Tampa Bay one. Like that is
it's crazy.
They have been elite against the run, like truly elite against the run this year. And I think a lot of it is Sue that they added and some of the other pieces they added along the defense. But man, they have been fantastic against the run so far this year.
When you look at the splits and rushing yards allowed per game, they're allowing 68. Number 2, New Orleans, up to 84. So 14-point gap, and then there's a big bunch of folks that are in that 84 to 89 range going from there. So pretty wide gap from first to second, and so surprising that it's Tampa Bay.
How much does this downgrade Chris Carson for you this week?
I mean, I'm still starting him because of the touches. He's a guy that you can pretty much lock in for 20-plus touches every game. So he's not somebody, even over the past few weeks, scoring-wise, that's going to win you any week by any means. But I think he's still going to put up a solid, 10 to 15 half PPR points, which would keep you happy in the low-tier RB1 type range. It's just all volume-based play. But I do think he is going to get stifled a bit more than usual against the Tampa Bay defense, but the volume will save him.
Yeah, I think it's hard to really sit him just because of, like you mentioned, the volume that he brings to the table. But I'm not expecting a great game from Chris Carson at all this week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they also lost I remember they also lost one of their Britt, right? Justin Britt, they're out one of their offensive linemen as well. So I think it was last week. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this is a tough one to really play him. But I think you'd hope for the best. If he gets you 10 fantasy points, 12, whatever. PPR, you're happy, but this is not a great matchup for them. He's been able to really, slow down. I mean, they're even going to slow down, to some degree, Christian McCaffrey a couple times this year and as well.
Yeah.
So
that one Thursday night game, they held him to almost nothing. I remember what he had, 5 fantasy points. It's crazy.
So yeah. So anyways, Cody, now you're back. Why don't you give us your running back that you looking to sit this week?
I just hate Derrick Henry, so I'm going to sit him any chance that I get. That's really as far as my analysis will go on this one. No, Carolina, up until San Fran, just ran literally all over them. They were a pretty solid rush defense. And whenever you're picking, you probably don't have that great of options that you're going to sit somebody like Derrick Henry that you took in the top 3 or 4 rounds. That I don't love the matchup. And this seems kind of like a bounce back spot for the Carolina offense. So I'm not sure that Tennessee is going to have game script in their favor, even though they've been pretty solid on defense on their own. But Derrick Henry, like I said, just anytime I can talk about not wanting to play him, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we're only a couple weeks away from Derrick Henry really taking off and spreading his wings and just crushing everybody's fantasy seasons that they're playing whenever he goes on that epic December run that he goes on every year. So
yeah,
it's inevitable, man. Inevitable.
Sit him while you can.
Yeah, exactly. Sit him, rest him up a little bit, and then once week 16 hits, and then you can, or week 14, you can fire him back up.
Absolutely. So, Nate, you have a former Kansas City Chief, former Jaguar, former Brown, former 49er this week. Who's your sit at running back?
I got Carlos Hyde. This one is probably somebody who people are thinking for a flex spot every once in a while, maybe not every week, but I'm going to tell you, don't do it this week. Jacksonville has been outstanding lately. The defense looks a lot more like the AFC Championship version of the team than it does the 2018 version. They just came off a great week stopping the run, and I think that's going to continue. Houston isn't much of a running team anyway, so even though Hyde is average, he got about 20 carries last week. I would sit him because I think Houston's going to have to win this game through the air.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Carlos Hyde is dead to me anyway, and I don't know. I wish they would give Duke Johnson the ball more.
Free Duke, man. He's better in every facet of the game. I don't understand.
I was so excited whenever that happened, and then
the
Carlos
trade
Hyde came along. Yeah.
So they gave up pretty significant. It was a 3rd-round pick they gave up for him.
Yeah.
They're not even going to use him. They just put old man Hyde out there and get those 3 yards per carry. I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
I think another one you can look at sitting this week, just real quick. Marlon Mack traveling to Pittsburgh. He's another one I would look at sitting. Pittsburgh has actually been really solid against the rush. So, he's going to get the touches. They seem to not really care whether or not they're facing a good rush defense. He's still gotten they played somebody recently that Marlon Mack really wasn't doing anything, but he still ended up with like 17 or 18 carries. So just one of those cases where you're probably don't have too many other good options as far, you probably drafted him again, top 5 rounds, but if you have somebody else that even might have a chance at a higher ceiling, I would look at setting Marlon Mack.
And Denver just shut him out last week.
Yeah, but on the end zone, didn't he?
He did, but in terms of efficiency, he wasn't very good. I think it was 17 carries for 50-some yards.
Yeah, the Colts offensive line is so talented that they can easily open up a few holes for him. But yeah, it'd be tough. You'd be hard pressed to want to sit him. I think it would depend on what you're able to pick up. For example, James Conner, he ends up getting ruled out, and like Jalen Samuels, maybe you could look there. Some other options there, but for me, there's certain ones that you definitely could go with, but I think an easy one, or at least one that I think people are going to be excited to want to play, even though it's a terrible matchup, is probably Kenyon Drake. Right now, Chase Edmonds looks to be out. We know David Johnson's going to be out. They very well could just be Kenyon Drake, and I guess Zach Zinner there. And so people that have been holding Kenyon Drake and waiting for him to finally be unleashed after he's been traded this week, and he is in for a pretty large, I think he's going to see a lot of touches in this game because they just don't have anybody else. But I just can't play him against San Francisco. Now I say that he'll probably go out and rip off 100 yards and a couple touchdowns against one of the best run defenses in the league. But yeah, I just can't play Kenyon Drake. So if everybody that has been hoping to finally play him and him to be unleashed, now he's in a situation where he's going to be the man. I would not expect that this week against this defense. So I just can't do that. So, all right, on to wide receivers who are wanting to sit. Nate, who's your wide receiver?
My wide receiver is Cortland Sutton. This is all about the new quarterback, Brandon Allen. I do not trust the quarterback change. Not like Joe Flacco was some revelation, but nonetheless, he was willing to push the ball down the field. Cleveland's not a particularly good defense, so I think that Sutton will probably still see a few targets, but it's too much uncertainty with Brandon Allen, and I will be trying to look elsewhere from Cortland Sutton.
I also think no matter who lines up against him, he's going to have a tough matchup as well, whether it's Greedy or Denzel.
Yeah, it's tough because he's literally the only one on the offense, though. So
right,
does he get over, does he see an insane amount of targets just because of the fact that quarterbacks enter this kind of situation tend to lock on to a player and will target him no matter what? And is that Cortland Sutton? And, there's also something to be said that maybe Deshaun Hamilton maybe get a little bit more opportunity in those, much higher value targets, the easier targets, running from the slot if they continue to run him there and maybe give him more opportunities. So maybe that, I guess, would be a way you could go, but I don't know. I don't think it's a terrible option. It would really just depend on who you had this week to be able to sit him for. So because of that. So for me, again, I'm kind of sticking on the same thing here. Larry Fitzgerald, things really were looking well for him earlier in the year, but they just really haven't been lately. And again, I hate this matchup against San Francisco. I really don't want to play anybody from this game. So I think Larry Fitzgerald is a pretty easy sit candidate this week.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'll just jump right into my sit of the week. It looks like we're just not starting any Cardinals whatsoever. Mine's Christian Kirk. SF's third best against wide receivers, fantasy points wise. They've allowed 11.5 fantasy points to QBs in the 4 games since their bye. That's not an average. That's a total number. 11.5 points over 4 games. They're number 1 in defensive DVOA. They're number 2 in PFF coverage grade. 2 of their corners, Sherman and Emmanuel Mosley, ranked top 2 in PFF, or top 15, in PFF grade. They only trail Baltimore in time of possession. Arizona's not going to see the ball that much. They're going to simply run. I feel like it's going to be 21-0. They'll split running back touchdowns amongst their committee backfield. Maybe Jimmy tosses a TD to George Kittle because they're so bad against tight ends, Arizona, that is. But yeah, just, sit all of your Cardinals this week is the the name of the game going up against the Niners.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Cody, you have a surprising one a little bit here with Juju.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at somebody who you're going to be starting him, right? Like, you probably don't have a lot of better options that you're just going to be able to sit Juju, but he is somebody I guess I would just go in with a little more trepidation. We talked about it earlier. Indy has seemed to be doing a good job of shutting down opposing wide receiver ones. If you're looking a little bit further down the list, Fantasy Pros 24th consensus receiver, Terry McLaurin, obviously playing at Buffalo. That entire season has been a dumpster fire. He's going to get a heavy dose of Tre'Davious White. One way he can win against him, though, is obviously with his speed. F1 has that 4.3 speed, and Tre'Davious White did run a 4.47. You probably do have somewhere you can go if you're sitting Tre'Davious White this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to imagine being able to sit Juju. It just really depends on what other options you had. But, I mean, I guess.
Right, yeah. I mean, people, I was just going a little bit higher there. Like, you don't have to be told to sit Devontae Parker. But, I mean, Juju, especially coming off that big game, people are going to plug him in and probably expect more of the same. Just pump the brakes and lower your expectations just a hair.
I don't know why you have to be the thief of joy, but let's jump on to tight ends real quick. Try to speed this up a little bit here. Cody doesn't have one, so let's Nate, you have old with this game we've kind of talked about a lot here. You have Mark Andrews. What concerns you with Mark Andrews?
That's mainly the matchup. Playing against New England, but it's a lot of what we saw in the last week. He had by far his lowest average depth of target in week 7 because they were on bye last week. It was only 4.9 yards, which was almost half of what he was averaging. He also had a case of the drop stees where I think he dropped 4 passes that were headed his way, including one that easily would have turned into a touchdown. He's getting 7 to 8 targets a game, so not a lot of people are going to have a better tight end than him, but if you do somehow, if you have a Jonnu or something, I think you might want to consider that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, especially in the tight end landscape to really imagine somebody having somebody significantly better situation. But yeah, I don't like Johnny Smith is interesting if Delaney Walker's out, and maybe there's a couple other ones. But yeah, that's tough. Ryan. Oh, so you want to come at me here? So
I was gonna say, man, this is some big time disagreement we got going on. I love it. I mean, to your point, I think tight end is something where you're praying for touchdowns, man. And this game could be a shootout, like we keep on talking about. That over under sitting at, what was it, like 56? I think Hawkinson has a chance to score, but I think that you even said it. We're looking at a line that's going to be like 2 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown. His targets have been decreasing since the year's begun. He's 17th in targets and tight end at 26 over the last 3 weeks since the bye week for Detroit. Again, I think he could score, but I'd rather play guys like Jonnu Smith and Dallas Goedert over him. And per Fantasy Pros, he's ranked above them. So just 2 names that we've thrown around that I would start over Hawkinson, and that more. I guess he's more of the name brand because he's, he is an athletic freak, and he is, was that high draft pick for them. But at this point, the volume just hasn't been there.
Yeah, but like I talked about with tight end, like you're not. For the most part, that's kind of what you're looking for. You get 2 or 3. You tell me if I get, if I can get 5, or if you can get, 10. Even 8 to 10 fantasy points from your tight end, you are doing backflips. You are happy. Yeah. Not many people have guys who are out here who are putting up big numbers every week. So, like TJ Hawkinson doesn't have to do a ton to be able to do it. The Raiders are not good against tight ends either. They've allowed the the second most touchdowns on the season to the position. Third most fantasy points as well. So they have not been fared well against the tight end. So. Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a way you can go. I get it, but like I said, like with tight end, you're just not asking for a whole lot. At other positions, if you get 8 points, if that's all you're hoping for, you're pretty upset. At tight end, like, okay, 8.
Yeah, 8. That'll do it. That's all I'm asking for. Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
Would you start a Goddard or Smith over him, or is that kind of where you draw the line?
Like a Smith, I could see it, but like a Goddard, the problem, like now you're talking about number 2 tight end. He really has to find the end zone to really do it. But again, we're looking at the same thing from Hawkinson. So I mean, I think it can go either way. There, I mean, I think those are kind of close. I think those are similar situations in that way. So, excuse me, yeah. So I mean, it's kind of pick your poison there. I think. Again, you're not looking for a ton. You get that magic 8 number or above, and you're thrilled.
Sitting pretty.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we have one more question, then we'll roll out here. A non PPR dynasty, I have Mixon on bye. I'm carry on owner, and also have Ty Johnson. Is he startable? Running backs are tough to trade for. Might be able to get Jalen Samuels maybe. What is your guys' thoughts, I guess, on Ty Johnson, especially there with the Lions shirt rocking there, Nate? What is your thoughts on Ty Johnson?
I mean, the Lions sort of threw everything at the wall last week to see what worked. They activated Paul Perkins from the practice squad because why not? I guess the revenge game narrative against his old team, the Giants, was part of it. They signed Trey Carson from the Green Bay Packers practice squad. And then they had a fullback active, and McKissick and Johnson were there. Johnson did still lead the game in snaps, but he did not lead the game in carries. That was Carson. But he did get the most targets, surprisingly, which most would have probably pegged to be McKissick's role to get. He probably has the most upside. Is he startable? Sure, he's startable against Oakland. It's not the worst matchup in the world, but with 3, maybe 4 running backs starting, it's not a great situation, and I don't think he's going to win you a week. But if that's all you have, sure, start him. Jalen Samuels, that's a great option if Connor's out, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be. I just depends on what you have to give up. So Ty Johnson, he's got upside, not very much.
Which is tough, right? Because I think a lot of people used a lot of heavy fab or high waiver priority to acquire him this past week. I know a lot of people use one, people that have probably been holding on to the people that, your waiver priority doesn't change until you use it. I know people that have sat there and probably waited for this all year, and then the Ty Johnson thing happened and used it, and then plugged him into the lineup and were sadly mistaken.
He didn't get the carry-on role. That's the lesson we learned is it's not going to just him. It's going to be a combination of McKissick, Ty Johnson, and apparently Trey Carson, who are going to somehow piecemeal that together to be somewhat close to Kerryon Johnson. All the touchdowns are coming through the air for the Lions offense. So, like I said, it's just not a high upside play.
Yeah, I think it's tough with him. It's because, like you mentioned, it is a true committee. So, yeah, I mean, it's if Jalen Samuels out there, I would definitely want to add him because, like we mentioned, if something happens and James Conner doesn't play, he immediately becomes like an RB1. So, yeah, like I would definitely want to at least try to stash him if you possibly can because I don't know, Ty Johnson doesn't scream high upside. So, yeah, I mean, does anybody else have a different opinion?
No, not really. I mean, it sounds like he might not have a choice other than to play Ty Johnson. I would go out and get Samuels if you can, but I'm not going to pay any more than a third round rookie pick, give or take around that kind of value. But if they're harder to trade for in that league, that's probably not going to get it done. Maybe you could look at like a Duke Johnson as kind of just like a cross your fingers and hope for the best kind of a play. Would there be any other like lower owned kind of like they could be productive if given the chance that he might be able to go out and like buy low on? Like Le'Veon Bell kind of comes to mind, but again, if this is a league that puts a premium on running back, probably not going to be able to acquire him too cheaply either. Even though he's had a couple of bad games and hasn't done too much just in general. Like I said, like a Duke Johnson, maybe Mark Walton. He's still semi-available in most dynasty leagues. Those might be options you can look at. I don't know if anyone else has any ideas on like a kind of like a buy low or just kind of like a cross your fingers and hope.
You know what the Lions should have done is they should have brought in Dominic Crockett. That's who they should have brought in. That would have been a fantastic signing.
Didn't he go to Green Bay?
I don't think so. If he is, he's on the practice squad.
Right.
But Dominic Crockett is a beast, and he's going to be a starting running back one day. I just know it. The Texans messed all that up by releasing him during the preseason. So. Anyways, all right. I think that's about it. I don't think we have anything else. Do you guys have any closings? Anything you guys want to say as we wind this thing down?
Don't start your Arizona Cardinals. Keep them on the bench this Halloween.
Good luck to everybody week 9.
That sums it up.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us for another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Steele, joined once again by old Hedge Life, O-Face. We're just adding new names now, Cody Kutzer. You can find him on Twitter at CKutzerFF. You can find Nate Henry at NateHenryFF. Pretty, again, really original. Love it. And then we have at the Murph34. Who is Ryan Murphy. So you can find them on Twitter and, check them out, check out their work, putting out a lot of good content on the fantasyauthority.com. And then, if you want to hit us up with more, you could jump into our Slack channel, which is free. Hit any of us up on Twitter and we can get you in there. And And like I said, it's a lot of fun, whether you play redraft, DFS, dynasty, best ball, it doesn't really matter. We got something in there. We got something else that works too, where we're talking about some, a dating app that we kind of talked about last week. We're starting to lay the groundwork, really starting to get some crowdsourced funding.
It's got legs.
Yeah. We'll see how that turns out. But so again, I appreciate everybody and for jumping on, and we will see you again next week.
I think Cody's going to offer wardrobe help. The wigs and the hair help for the dating app. That's that comes in free. That's actually a free service that we're giving away. I mean, you're taking our money for this.
Hey, I look pretty good in a wig, if I do say so myself. So come in, get some dating advice, get some fashion advice. We got you covered here at TFA.
All in one podcast, baby.
Well, I did end so it is still live, but I did hit that. So we can't answer this question, but it's not recording anymore. So now
it's hair down a little bit.
It's like TFA Raw now. It's like unedited. Do what we want. The business attire is off. Pants off. So Rafael Markel. He's got some tough matchups in the. Oh wait, should I trade away Cooper Kupp? He has some matchups in the playoffs. Julio and Hopkins.
I don't think he can. I think he
is a prime regression target or candidate as he's run.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of what I would trade Kupp for. I mean, would you trade him straight up for Hopkins? I'd probably do that. Honestly, he has Julio. Yeah. I thought he was asking if he should. Besides those receivers, those would be the two that come to mind in like a straight up trade. If you want to, just again, I know that the guys have kind of thrown this around, announced to your league that Cooper Kupp's for sale. I'm sure there's somebody willing to overpay for him. I don't want to objectively ship him off for any other wide receiver besides like a Hopkins or a Julio Jones, but. If you're able to get like a package deal, like 2 RB1s or an RB1 and a wide receiver one, and you need the depth, then yeah, I got nothing wrong with that. But just like the blanket statement, should I sell Cooper Kupp right now? I don't think that he's a sell candidate necessarily.
Yeah, you better be getting more than fair value, I think, for Kupp, especially coming off of that game. So I mean, and like Kevin's brought up with some of these trade questions we get, it also depends on, I'm assuming you have either a third wide receiver spot or a flex spot that you can Hilton and Mack for Kupp. No, I want Kupp there.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I'd take Kupp.
Yeah, if you have, I'm assuming you're going to be able to start all 3 of those. And even though he might not have a great, I don't know what his schedule is off the top of my head coming up in the playoffs. But Kupp seems to be someone that they scheme to get him the ball, and he's been one of the only productive pieces in that passing offense. So I would want like a slight overpay to move Kupp.
Yeah, I mean, it would really depend on what are you really hurting at wide receiver or excuse me, not wide receiver, but running back? And if somebody wants to move on from somebody who maybe an owner is really stacked at running back, and I don't know, it's just tough knowing what you could get for him, because as well as Cooper Kupp has played, like he truly has, and really it's a testament to him, considering he was coming off that late ACL, that late knee injury last year. And I think most people were down on him heading into the season, didn't think that he was going to be somebody anybody should target. People should avoid him like the plague. And boy, were they wrong.
Yeah, there were a couple of those videos in the offseason too, of like him running, and he looked like he was laboring. So I was definitely one of the ones, because that happened late in the season too. You know what I mean? That takes 12 months to fully recover. So I was lower on him as well, but he's been killing it. Yeah, he has Dalvin and Fournette. So I don't think you're hurting for running back help at all. So that's like I said, if I'm moving Cup, I'm only moving him if I'm getting more than fair value, and I'm not doing it just to with that team that he has. There's really not a need, so I would make sure I got back plus value in that trade.
Yeah, it feels more like just making a trade to make a trade, right? Because that's pretty stacked. I mean, with among running backs, wide receivers. If I was going to do anything, it would be for a running back, but like it would have to be something pretty special. Like it would have to be like, I don't know, maybe like a package of like Le'Veon Bell and another player, or maybe a wide receiver or something to go along with that for me to even consider trading Cooper Kupp at this point.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but getting two players on the same team, like especially one like Mac's not super involved in the passing game, so you got to figure if Hilton goes off, Mac's maybe not doing too much. You know what I mean? So like that's not necessarily an offense where I'd want two pieces coming back in the same from the same trade.
No, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those tough things. Like a lot of people, I know some people like to trade. I'm like completely trade averse. Like I do not like trading at all. Like I might trade once a year if I don't have to. Because I don't know, I'm always afraid that like it's gonna blow up in my face. And so I've done it before, and I made a trade, and it just didn't work out. And so I always feel like that. I don't know. So maybe it's the same thing with like my bench too. Like we've had this discussion before, and like on the podcast, and I draft a lot of these players with high upside. So like I'll hold on to them all year, and it's hard for me just to let them go. And sometimes I just need to talk myself through it and kind of like they're it's okay to release them back into the wild, because I'm always afraid that I'm going to drop somebody, and the fucking second I do, that there's going to be some huge injury, and something's going to happen. So
yeah, it's going to be. Dude, that happened to me in the Scott Fish Bowl, obviously Superflex league. I drafted Tannehill like real late, and then the week before he got the nod, I think was when I dropped him, and then forgot to put in waiver, didn't get him off waivers. So that was one of the ones where it was just that same thing. Held on to him that whole time, dropped him, and then the next week now he has a starting gig.
Yeah, and I mean, so like I don't play a ton of like I'm not like most people that are in like a ton of leagues. I play so much redraft or so much DFS, excuse me, that I kind of like, that's my fantasy exposure. But I do play, like I have my one home league, keeper league that I play, and I'm also in the Scott Fish Bowl. But which, by the way, that my Scott Fish Bowl team is fucking atrocious. I am the last 2 years before this, like I was in the playoffs and made deep runs. This year I'm 0-8, I think.
I just got my first loss last week. That team's actually been doing pretty well.
So my roster is, I have Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, and then I also have Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon. Who the fuck else?
Oh boy,
where's it at?
I mean, it also helps to do well in the Scott Fish Bowl, and you have the second pick, and you take Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think I had the 8th pick, I think. Let me see. I'm trying to think who else I know I have. Okay, so it's Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, Mitch Trubisky, and then I have Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Marlon Mack, Miles Sanders. I also have DeAndre Washington, Jalen Samuels, Tony Pollard, and Gio Bernard. And then I have my wide receivers are Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, Curtis Samuel, Josh Gordon, and then Michael Gallup and Robert Foster, which I should probably drop. I don't know why I still have them. And then my tight ends are Tyler Eifert, Vance McDonald, Irv Smith, and Dan Arnold, which I picked up Dan Arnold this past week. I mean, if I have an opportunity to pick up Dan Arnold, I'm going to pick up Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold's the man. But anyways, but yeah, like that to me, like that was like, on paper, that team's not 0-7, but it's fucking 0-7.
Yeah, Wentz and Winston at quarterback. Talked about McCaffrey. I also took Gurley. I took him in the second, I think, when it came back to me. Then I have like Keenan Allen, John Brown, Chris Conley, Gallup, Godwin, DK Metcalf. I have Sammy, and then Austin Hooper has been a pretty nice guy to have a tight end there.
Yeah, it's brutal. Like I wouldn't really even keep up with it because like his team's so bad, but like I want to play in the Scott Fish Bowl next year. Not that I don't love it, but like it's just like it's no point now. I'm 0-8. And so I feel like this team's not bad on paper. This is like at least a 5-win team, I feel like. But no, it's just been fucking brutal. My quarterbacks have been awful. So I don't know. So is life.
That's a topic I wanted to bring up today, and I forgot about it. But just talking about in redraft leagues, like if you are like a 1-win, a no-win team, like are you putting in waivers? Or you know what I mean? I'm assuming most people are like, if you're into it, you're at least going to set your lineups. You don't want to be that guy. But like, you know what I mean? Like, are you going out and getting waivers? And then like on the other side of that, like, because I've been on both sides where it's, I have a team that's making a playoff run and there's a 0-win team making waiver ads. I'm just like, what the fuck is this guy doing? What the fuck is he picking people up for? But then like on the other side of it, it's just like, is that something I just thought that would be an interesting discussion. So maybe next week we can bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should for sure. I think you need to don't be that guy and just give up and just. I see where's your point coming from because it can get frustrating. I've seen some teams like at a certain point, they lock waivers for those teams. Like I think when playoffs start, where they can no longer for no longer making moves. Like it's you really can't do it with ESPN or Yahoo so much, but like if you're in my fantasy league, I think you can actually set it because that's what that was. I know that in that league where basically it would run 2 separate sets of waivers for the teams that were in it and the teams that were out of it. So you weren't getting sniped by the guy who's just making a waiver ad or his buddy's like, hey dude, you have a high waiver ad, go add this guy because the guy I'm going to play this week can pick him up. Like certain things like that. But I mean, I don't think you should quit, but at the same time, I can understand. I mean, it kind of happens. At the very minimum, just set your lineup. You don't have to go make.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's nothing worse, especially if somebody gets a little wild. If somebody's getting free wins and somebody sneaks into the playoffs every because they're playing the guy who doesn't care and half his team is injured or out or whatever. So I think that at least just set your lineup.
Yeah. Set your lineups for sure. But like I said, the waiver discussion and like just like how far does your trying go? Like in a redraft league when you're, at this point of the season when you're a 0-win or like a 1-win team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're not going to have any motivation because you're out of it. You're not going to win. The only thing I would say is that's why I like being in leagues that offer the toilet bowl. At least give something. So at the very least, you have some motivation to keep going, keep trying. Even though in the regular season you don't really have it, but once the season's over with, once the playoffs start, that's how it is in that league. I think it's like $80 or something like that goes to the toilet bowl winner. So it kind of keeps them interested in it at least. So I don't know. But anyways, I think we can just go ahead, and I think that's it for the questions and everything else. We'll just go ahead and jump off. I appreciate everyone that's watched and checked us out this week, and we will see you again next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.